Welcome back to Sprague Homestead. So today on Mailbag Monday, you've got me, Canaan, and we're going to talk about solar. So I had mentioned on a previous video that it had kind of taken off and done pretty well. For whatever reason, it's collected over 42,000 views in just over a week and a half, which means we've brought in a lot of new viewers, a lot of new critics, but some great questions. So I picked out 5 of those questions to answer, and today we're going to talk all about the best things on solar. So in all of our solar videos, we're typically talking about storing power, and that's typically with batteries for overnight use. We use a flooded lead acid battery, and one of the great questions was, what is going to be the best battery out there on the market for your solar? And unfortunately, that is kind of a loaded question. There are so many variables that go into storage. A flooded lead acid battery may work well for like somebody like me, but it requires a little bit more maintenance and it's lower cost. Now, there are other things out there like a lithium iron. There are others out there that are like a lithium ion, like a Tesla wall mount. There's a lot of options out there. And the unfortunate part is it's not easy to pick one over the other unless you look at all the factors involved. So I plan on doing a future video on that, on which is the best battery, and I'm going to list the pros and cons of each to kind of help break down which one is going to be best for you given your situation. Now again, one of the other questions on batteries was, how big of a battery bank do you need? And unfortunately, again, that one is going to be hard to answer. So some of the things you do need to think about is, how much power do you need to store? When we set up our solar system, we pretty much put it in a bank of 16 6-volt batteries. So we have a 48-volt system, and we have around 1,000 amp hours available. Now, what you need to think about when you look at this is, how long do you need to go without making power, or how long does that power need to last? Some of the things like lithium ion or lithium iron, they can actually do a drawdown percentage on the batteries. For us, I try to take ours no more than 20% drain on the battery bank overall, which means I need a bigger bank in order to use the same amount of power. For ours, I set up, really, I didn't want to go longer than about a day or a day and a half without having some kind of power to charge my batteries. Given that I have flooded lead acid batteries, most of the time I'm trying to not draw more than 25% of the power out of the bank. Now that is going to increase the longevity of the battery bank itself. If I were to draw it more than that, I would decrease the amount of usage or the life of the batteries. So really knowing that I'm only going to try and go to day and a day and a half, which means I can have a little bit less storage than somebody that needs to go like 3 days, 5 days, or anything in between. So it's really going to be a hard answer to give, because it really depends on a lot of factors involved of how much power you need to have available and how long you need to use it. And probably the third one to discuss about batteries is, really, somebody asked, what's really the biggest drawback of solar? Unfortunately, it's really the amount of power available on demand, and that has to deal with storage. Now, you've probably read a lot, no matter where you are, you know that Northern California right now is under blackout conditions. What typically happens on demand is when everybody comes home between 4 p.m. and 8 p.m., everybody turns on all their power equipment. Either they turn on their AC or they turn it down, which means it ramps up. They turn on TVs, anything at home, kind of power electronics. Well, when everybody does that, it means all of that sustainable energy now has to be drawn in. And really, between 4, 5, 6, 7 o'clock, you're not making enough power as you would at like noon or high noon, when you're making ample amounts of power onto your panels. So really, it's not necessarily the cost of it, it's not necessarily the storage of it, it's the amount of power you need on demand, and a lot of times that is going to come out of your battery bank. And for a major grid itself, that means we need to have a massive amount of storage available, especially after dark. Now, another great question somebody had asked is, how long does everything last? Because I had mentioned in a previous one about the hidden costs of solar was about the batteries and the maintenance and the generator itself. Right now, everything is slated to be about 10 to 15 years on the inverters, the chargers, everything electronic. Batteries are going to be variable because the flooded lead acid we have are based on our demand. I'm calculating those are going to be about 11 years in service before they need to be replaced. I've seen some go as low as 5. I've seen go a little bit more than that. My goal is to hit 11 years with them. And then outside of that, your solar panels are typically rated 25 to 30 years before they start diminishing off. Our panels themselves are rated at 80% output at 30 years of service. So kind of depends on what you're talking about in there. That could be 5 years for batteries if you really run them heavy. It could be 10 years for inverters and chargers, or it could be 30 years for solar. Kind of depends on what you're asking about. And the last question, I honestly didn't know the answer to. I had to look it up because I've always wondered it myself. And it was, do you make power when it's a full moon out? And the answer is no. You do not actually make power with the sun reflecting off the moon. So you need direct sunlight onto your panels in order to make them make power. A reflective light coming off of the moon does not actually keep the photons coming out of sunlight onto your panels. It's only a light reflection that doesn't have the correct properties. Now, there are actually panels out there called lunar panels that can harvest that light reflecting off the moon and make power with it. They're not called solar, they're lunar because of the moon. But they actually can do that. I've never looked at it, and I've always thought that would be kind of cool. You look up, you see a big moon up in the sky, and it's like, I wonder if I'm making power right now. Well, the answer is no. Even not a minuscule amount, solar panels will not do it. But maybe with lunar panels. So that's it. There's the 5 questions on solar this week to cover batteries, storage, lunar panels, and how long everything should last. So if you guys have more questions on solar, or you want me to put together videos on other things, drop them down in the comments. I'm already working on a list of things I'm going to cover in the future. Just haven't had enough time to research it all yet, but I will be bringing them to the channel. So if you've got ideas or questions, throw them down in the comments. Otherwise, we'll see you next time for Sprague Homestead. Happy homesteading.